All right, let's talk about something fascinating. All the hidden forces that are secretly shaping, well, pretty much everything you do every single day. So let me ask you something right off the bat. Think about the last big choice you made. Could be anything: a new job, a car, even just what to binge watch next. Why'd you pick that one? Now, if you're anything like me, your answer is probably pretty straightforward, right? You'd say, well, I chose it because I liked it. It fit your tastes, your personality. It was a personal decision. And that seems totally logical. Of course, our choices are our own. Except, what if I told you that's not really the case? In fact, according to Jonah Berger's work, that whole idea that we're these totally independent decision makers, it's pretty much wrong. Yeah, you heard that right. Get this. A mind-blowing 99.9% of the decisions we make are actually shaped by other people. I mean, from the food you buy to the career you choose, you're being influenced in ways you probably can't even see. And the craziest part? The one person we can't seem to spot this influence on is ourselves. And that leads us to this huge, gaping blind spot we all seem to share. There's this one study that just nails this idea perfectly. So picture this. Researchers go to Palo Alto, California, a super affluent area. They start putting surveys on the windshields of fancy BMWs, asking the owners a few simple questions about why they bought their car. Okay, now here's where it gets really juicy. They asked the owners to think about what influenced their decision, and then what they thought influenced other BMW owners. And sure, they said things like price and gas mileage were important for everyone. But what about the social stuff? Looking cool, keeping up with friends, that whole status thing? Oh no, they said. That stuff, that only influences other people, not me. And that right there is the big takeaway. We are fantastic at seeing how social influence works on everybody else. We can see it plain as day. But the second we try to look at ourselves, it's like, poof, it just vanishes. We're completely blind to it. Okay, so we have this major blind spot. But the influence can be way, way more subtle than that. I mean, check this out. This next experiment shows how it can work its magic without anyone ever saying a single word. So this professor, Richard Moreland, runs this really clever experiment. He has 4 different women pretend to be students in one of his big lecture classes, and nobody in the class has any clue that they're part of a study. All right, here's how it worked. It was super simple. One of the women came to 15 classes. Another one came to 10. A third one showed up for 5. And the last one? She never came to class at all. Now, the really important part is that these women never talked to anyone. They just sat there, listened to the lecture, and left. Then, at the very end of the semester, the real students were shown pictures of the 4 women and asked to rate how attractive they found them. And the results? Whoa. They were absolutely striking. The woman who attended the most classes, 15 of them, was rated as way more attractive than the one who only came 10 times. And she was rated higher than the one who came 5 times. And you can guess the rest. There was a direct line. The more they saw her, the more they liked her. This is a classic example of a psychological principle called mere exposure. It's a fancy way of saying something super simple. The more we see something or someone, the more we tend to like it. Familiarity literally breeds liking. But here is the absolute kicker. When the students were asked why they preferred one woman over the others, they had no idea. In fact, most of them didn't even consciously remember seeing the women in class at all. They would have sworn up and down that just seeing someone more often had zero, absolutely zero effect on their judgment. The influence was totally invisible to them. Okay, so just seeing someone can change our minds. That's pretty wild. But what about something even smaller, like a few simple words? This next experiment is going to show you how our entire reality can be shifted in a split second. All right, I want you to play along with me on this next one. We're going to do a little memory test. I'm going to flash a list of words on the screen. Just try to memorize them. You got them? Okay, we've got reckless, conceited, aloof, and stubborn. Just keep those floating around in your head for a second. Okay, now with those words in mind, I want you to read this quick story about a guy named Donald. He's into some pretty extreme stuff, climbing mountains, demolition derbies, and he's super persistent. Once he makes up his mind, that's it. So, what's your first impression of Donald? If you're like most people who did this experiment, you probably have a kind of negative view of him. You might even use words like, reckless, conceited, stubborn. Ring any bells? But what if we just changed one tiny little thing at the beginning? Let's hit the rewind button. Imagine you're about to read the exact same story about Donald, but right before you do, I give you a different set of words to remember. Adventurous, self-confident, independent, and persistent. Now, if you think about it, these words can describe the exact same behaviors, just in a much more positive light. And what happens? When a totally different group of people saw these positive words first, they read the same story and judged Donald positively. They saw an adventurous, persistent guy. That initial list of words, which had nothing to do with Donald, secretly painted their entire picture of him. That's the invisible power of priming. So, what does all of this mean? Well, we all like to think of ourselves as the lone wolf, the independent thinker in a crowd of sheep, right? But as this quote says, whether that's actually true, well, that's a whole other story. Look, these invisible forces are not just real, they're incredibly powerful. So the question isn't really if they're affecting you, they are. The real question is how. And now that you know they're there, now that you can see behind the curtain a little bit, what choice, what belief you hold, are you going to start to look at a little differently?